Good evening. My name is Jan Liggett, Mayor and Chair of this Council meeting. Today, we continue the process to consider the proposed 2026 budget. There are 3 statutory time periods that relate to this budget process. The proposed 2026 budget was presented to Council on Monday, October 27th, beginning the 29-day amendment period. On Thursday, November 6th, Council heard from the public concerning the proposed budget. Any members of the public who are unable to attend delegation night may still submit written correspondence to clerks@cambridge.ca. Council will receive written correspondence before further consideration of the budget. Additionally, written correspondence will also form part of the official record of the budget meetings. Tonight's meeting is the first budget amendment meeting, and we have an additional budget amendment meeting on Monday, November 24th at 5:30 p.m. This evening and November 24th are for members of Council to present the proposed budget amendments. If Council has any amendments they would like to bring forward, they should contact the clerk in advance, at which time you will be directed to the City Manager, CFO, and appropriate General Manager on the wording and impacts of the amendment. The clerk must receive any amendments in writing on the provided form by no later than noon on November 20th for the November 24th meeting. Before we begin, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge and thank everyone for joining us for this meeting. We appreciate your participation. As we come together to serve the community, I ask that we create a welcoming and positive environment for everyone that includes respect, kindness, and inclusion. Together, we can make this meeting space one where respect, kindness, and inclusion are at the heart of everything we do, that this is a safe space. Behavior that is disrespectful, disruptive, aggressive, or intimidating will result in those individuals being asked to leave. In the event of an emergency, please evacuate Council chambers using the nearest exit staircase. Should you require assistance, please see our clerk's staff and they will provide you with support to exit the facility. Once you have evacuated the building, please gather outside of City Hall in the Farmers Market parking lot and await further instructions. It is now my pleasure to introduce Council. Councillor Hamilton, Councillor Mehta, Councillor Kimson, Councillor Roberts, Councillor Cooper, Councillor Schwery, Councillor Earnshaw, and Councillor Devine. A reminder to members of Council that the Municipal Conflict of Interest Act requires Council members to declare any direct or indirect pecuniary interest in relation to a matter under consideration. Are there any such declarations this evening? I see none. We will now have some remarks by our City Manager, Rob Axiak.
Thank you, Mayor. So good evening, Mayor, members of Council, and to the public. First, I'd like to say thank you to all members of Council for both your grace and your patience as we move forward together with the budget process. I do acknowledge that there have been some changes to the budget process this year. Staff will continue to refine the process based on parameters of provincial legislation and are here to support members of Council. I would like to run through how we plan to proceed this evening as a continuation from October 27th, the budget kickoff meeting. We will look to accomplish 3 items tonight. First, I'll provide some opening remarks to help clarify the process. Through the Mayor, we will ask our CFO, Sheena, to provide an update on assessment growth. Following this update, the Mayor will look to make a decision on this new information as part of her mayoral budget. And third, based on our discussions had today with members of Council who had submitted amendments and who had discussed the details with staff, through the Mayor, offer the opportunity for each member of Council to present their proposed amendment and for Council members to ask questions to the councillor who proposed the amendment. As related to the amendments and the amendment process, the amendments are yours as Council members. It would be incumbent of all members of Council to ensure that your amendment, before it hits the floor, includes all necessary facts and figures. As this is your amendment, it is important for you to fully understand all the implications of your amendment so you can speak of this when questions are asked of you by your fellow members of Council. This includes an understanding of what the tax levy implications are, if any. It is our role as staff to supply you with all the necessary information before the amendment meeting so you can answer to your amendment and respond to your fellow councillors. These amendment meetings are designed for council members to put forth your fully informed amendments that the public can hear and council can review, debate, and make decisions on. There is one more council amendment meeting before the end of the legislated 30-day amendment period. I request all members of council who are looking to put forward an amendment that you meet one-on-one with staff so we can provide you with all the necessary information you need to present an answer to your amendment. Trusting this adds further clarity to council members and to the public. I'll now turn it back over to the Mayor to call on our CFO, Sheena, to provide an update on assessment growth and its impact on the proposed 2026 budget. Thank you.
Councillor Devine.
Just a document dropped in front of us, 2026 budget with 9 items on it. Who is this from? It doesn't say.
Which document? I'm sorry.
Through you, Mayor. So the question, or the paper that you held up was some prompt questions, and we just provided those to you as the corporate leadership team and clerks. Should you have any questions you might want to ask of the councillor who's presenting their budget, they're just complete prompt questions for you. If you'd like to use them, of course, you obviously can ask your own questions. They're there to help you.
And they're from who? That was the question?
The corporate leadership team.
Thank you.
As a note for council, your addendum package for today includes a memo regarding the 2026 budget assessment growth update. This memo is for information purposes only, and it is not for discussion this evening. At this point, I'd like to ask our CFO, Sheena Polyak, to briefly speak to this particular memo.
Thank you, Mayor Leggett. Through you. Assessment growth is the increase in the city's property tax base from new construction, major renovations, and property changes. The 2026 budget, released on October 27th, includes an estimated assessment growth figure of 1.26%, aligning with long-term averages of the city. The Municipal Property Assessment Corporation's deadline for supplementary and omitted assessments was October 30th. The final growth increase for the city has since been updated to 2.2%, resulting in an incremental revenue totaling $1,146,200.
Thank you for that update, Sheena. After learning of this late last week, I am mindful of the need to incorporate assessment growth revenue to offset budget pressures, while also considering what 2027 and beyond may look like. Accordingly, I have asked staff to allocate half of this additional assessment growth totaling $573,100 to the 2026 budget, effectively reducing the proposed levy from 4.86 to 4.36 to provide some additional relief for our residents next year. I am allocating the other 50% as a contribution to the tax rate stabilization reserve, where it will be available in 2027 and beyond to offset future budget pressures. Assessment growth funding is additional tax revenue generated from new homes and businesses. Updating the budget with this revenue ensures the city can continue to meet service demands while maintaining service excellence without putting additional pressures on the existing tax base. Are there any questions on that? Okay, as a reminder, no amendments will be voted on today. This meeting is to present the proposed amendments received so far and allow council to ask questions of each other. There are question prompts left for each of you at your seats to help support the dialogue. These amendments are being presented in the order they were received. Our first budget amendment concerns the outdoor festival grounds. Councillor Hamilton, can you please read your amendment in its entirety?
Thank you, Mayor Leggett, and through you. And it is that the project A/01.
Do you have a seconder?
Oh, yes, I do. Councillor Kimson, I'm sorry.
Thank you.
It's moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Kimson. Proposed budget amendment is that project A/01825-40, outdoor festival grounds construction, be removed from budget. And if I may speak to that. Thank you. So this is the opportunity of council to go through a budget carefully, tactfully, and patiently to ensure that all the expenditures we make are to the benefit of citizens of the city today and for tomorrow. And so when it comes to this outdoor festival grounds, I'd like to remove it from the budget because it is a bit of a surprise. It is a large capital project that I think affects the welfare of residents, not just in the entire city, but especially in Ward 7 around this location on Savage Drive. So the first concern I have would be the specific location, how it will affect the houses that are going to be constructed on Main Street, the large urban developments that are going in that area, how that sound will permeate across that area of Ward 7, which does comprise large segments of residential homes that are already affected by train whistles, and they're not receiving any cessation from those whistles because obviously we have little control over that. I think that a project like this, instead of giving it a stamp and passing it through a budget like this, it's important to bring it back to council, to have proper public deliberation, preparedness, awareness, to hear their ideas, their suggestions, and also their concerns, and to have ideas for improvement. I do have questions about transportation. Typically when we have festival grounds, there's active transportation routes, there's public transportation, there's roads that can accommodate large flows of traffic that something like a festival ground would demand. And there's also the budgetary question of timing. Is this the best time for this? And it's my understanding that there's no inherent rush to bring this to the fore at the moment. If we defer it a year or two, if we remove it from this budget, we take a calm, patient look at it next year, see if this is the right thing we want to do, if this is the right place, the right time, the right size, the right venue. I think it's better to measure twice and cut once. And by putting it through this budget right now, I feel like we're just cutting once without public consultation and without bringing it to council for our own significant input, which could shape the future of this project. And it is something that will affect the city for many years to come. So with that, that's why I think we should remove it from this budget, have a calm look at it, and if it's something we want to move forward with as a city, considering this price tag, then we should move forward with it. And I see the price tag is $750,000, but for a project of this scope, as we're seeing with a lot of the projects that we've been passing in recent years, I mean, $750,000, that's like a parking lot and a bathroom. So if we look at the whole grounds, if it is going to accommodate medium and large scale events, what will that actually comprise in terms of capital costs and operating costs in years to come? Because it seems like right now we have bathrooms going in that are a quarter of the price of this project. So if we're looking at a large operating grounds for shows, for festivals, in terms of the parking, the roads, the safety, the infrastructure, the fencing, the lighting, the electrical, I think it runs a risk of going beyond that $750,000. And so I think we should take a slower look at it. And hence we should remove it from the budget this year, bring it back and see if it's something we really want to do. Measure twice and then cut once, rather than just cutting right now. Thanks.
Are there any questions from members of council to Councillor Roberts?
Thank you, Mayor Jan. This is not a question to Councillor Hamilton, but a procedural question. I'm just confused. It's my understanding that council must vote on an amendment for it to be valid under the strong mayor budget process. So I'm just curious when we will actually be voting on these amendments, because it doesn't seem like they're actually going to be valid if we just put them on the floor and we don't do anything with them.
Through the mayor, so on the 24th, council will have the opportunity to vote on any amendments that have been brought forward.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Yes, I just want to clarify, if you say this is question time, is this questions for Scott or is this questions for staff?
It's only questions to each other.
Okay, do we get any staff questions at any point?
No. You can ask the questions after, if you want, in between the meetings, so before the 24th, if you want to get questions to staff on this, you can.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor, does your deferral of this or removal from this have any impact on the proposed tax levy?
There we go. Thank you, Mayor Liggett, and through you. It's my understanding that this would not, let's say, reduce the amount of taxes residents would pay next year because this is funded, I think, through reserves in the MAT tax. It would still ultimately reduce expenditures by $750,000, and those expenditures still come from taxpayer dollars, albeit from reserves.
Okay, so the point of this budget is about the tax levy. This does not decrease how much taxes the residents will be paying into 2026 for this, correct?
It would reduce expenditures by $750,000.
But it would not reduce the tax levy, is what I'm saying. That was my question to you.
I believe that's correct. If I can
Okay.
look to Sheena. It's from a reserve.
No, there's no questions to staff here. My other question to you is, did you speak with staff on this prior to tonight?
Yes.
And did they tell you that the $750,000 is not all in 1 year? That there was going to be consultation and all the different studies and designs prior to the $750,000 to be spent?
That was discussed with me today, and I appreciated staff coming forward and bringing that information, but I think with such a sizable project, if this information is coming today, it behooves us to, again, take a slow, measured look at this.
So do you not think that the slow measured look could be taken in 2026 before any large expenditures happen?
It's my understanding that if we commit to this right now, we commit to hundreds of thousands of dollars, if not the entire project. So I think it's good for us as a council to take a look and also to integrate the public to see if this is something that's necessary.
Okay, do you realize this also alleviates all the sound complaints that we have been receiving over the past few years from Riverside Park and all the other parks?
Well, it's my understanding that not every single event in the city would move here, and this is still in its exploratory stage, as staff expressed to me today, that there would be nothing written in stone, but this is something for us to look at moving forward to see how it could be designed. A neighbor in Ward 7 close by told me a story of, I think it was a cowboy restaurant or a country bar that was right on the corner of Franklin and 24, and how that was built and there was nothing but fields around it. And then as the houses got built, the houses started complaining about the noise and the sound from the bar. Now that bar is no longer there. So my question and my concern about this, about moving forward with it so quickly, is what happens when all those homes on Main are built, and what happens when all the construction in the area does occur? Because that area, Main and Franklin, is slated to be an intense growth area, especially with the bypass coming through with the region. So I think these are all just questions that are valid enough for us to say, tap the brakes and take a look at it.
But isn't that what is being done here by tapping the brakes and doing the study next year on transportation, on sound and noise levels?
It's my understanding, talking with staff, if this is approved, it goes forward.
Only the portion of the consultant's study on noise and transportation, that sort of thing. And there still has to be a look at whether it can be done environmentally.
I appreciate all that, Mayor Liggett. Thank you. It's still, my amendment stands.
Okay, Councillor Devine?
And thank you, through the chair. At the expense of getting my head shot off here, a 1% increase in taxes at one point used to be about $750,000. Do we know what it is today? Can anybody answer that? Because I think we should all know that.
I think it's still $1 million, but
It's $1 million now?
I think so, but I will allow that question from Sheena. Sheena, could you answer that, please?
Thank you. Through the mayor, a 1% tax levy amounts to approximately $1.2 million today.
1.2, thank you.
Okay. So, and as I had mentioned, does not affect the tax levy or increase his amendment does not affect that. Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor Jan, and through you. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton, for your amendment. Do you know, yes, while this event space may not directly impact the tax levy, I would imagine there will be operating costs associated with this event space moving forward. So even if we were to get it all funded through, say, the MAT or other reserve funds, eventually, I would imagine there will be operating costs. Is this something that staff discussed with you at all, or?
This was one of the questions I put into my amendment, which is why I think taking another second look at this is important, because there will most certainly be operating costs. What those are, I'm not quite sure, because the facility has not yet been constructed, but yes, there will be ongoing costs to it.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kimson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan, and through you. Thank you, Councillor Hamilton, for bringing this amendment forward. I'm pleased to second it. I'm wondering, at any time was this project discussed with you prior to the budget, either by Mayor Liggett or other members of staff, seeing as how it's in your ward?
No, the project was not discussed with me prior to finding it on the budget, at which point I approached staff, asking questions about this and a number of other projects in the budget. So I was not aware of this until we received our budget package.
Thank you.
Councillor Schwery.
Thank you, Mayor Liggett, and thanks Scott, for your presentation or for your motion. I have a question in regards to, it says from other reserves. Did staff tell you whether they are obligatory or non-obligatory reserves? Because it says it's for next year's budget, 750.
No, I've not been informed of whether the reserves are obligatory or non-obligatory, and I could not answer that.
Thank you.
Councillor Earnshaw.
Thank you, Mayor Liggett. Councillor Hamilton, I'm following up on a question that was asked to you by the mayor with respect to the $750,000. And when I look at page 184 of the budget brief, I see that of that sum, $532,500 is earmarked for something called construct implement. And yet the mayor's questions were along the lines that this is for studies and so forth. So can you enlighten me as to what construction would be considered, or if any?
I cannot. I'm not quite sure what construct implement pertains to. I direct that question to staff. But when I approached staff with this, my question was, if this goes forward, will this be built? And the answer was generally yes. It's the green light.
Councillor Kimson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan, through you. Councillor Hamilton, have you had any discussions with any of the BIAs or other groups about their desire to move the larger events out of their areas to this proposed festival space?
Thank you, Councillor Kimson, for the question. No, considering I just learned of this festival space when we received the budget, those discussions haven't occurred, and I think it'd be fruitful if we did have those discussions with all of the BIAs, because this would not only affect Savage Drive and the festival grounds area, it would affect all of the downtown cores, because right now, whenever there is a festival in Riverside Park, in Galt, and Preston, yes, there are noise complaints, but there is also tourism, there's money that's spent in the local shops and facilities, so I would be curious to hear whether or not they would be in support or opposed to it. The only feedback I did hear were from residents living on Main Street that were concerned about it. They were concerned about the noise because, as we know from these event spaces, the noise filters down. Thank you.
So let me tell you a little story. Back when we were looking for spaces for affordable housing, places that we could use for that, I happened to come across a piece of property that was about 100 acres that the city owned. When I learned of that, I thought, oh, we could use this for affordable housing. So then on checking, I found out that we had a problem with the region. So this goes on for quite a number of months. There was a discussion of whether we owned the property or whether the region owned the property. This continued for multiple months. Then there was a discussion about the environmental issues that could happen, and the Ministry of the Environment got involved. More months go by. This isn't about, as is being alluded here, that I have somehow kept something from council. This has nothing like that. A lot of work had to go into it. Staff had to do a lot of checking. We had to get an agreement with the Ministry of Environment because there's a gas line of gas, methane gas, that runs through that property that is sold to one of the industries nearby. So the ministry had to sign off on whether that could be done or not, which they did. Finally, the region signed off. So that's how this got into the budget so late. And I really resent it being stated or implied that I have deliberately kept something from council here. There was no idea of keeping anything from council from this. It's also not going to affect the people from Main Street because it's not actually on Savage Drive. It's on another street that's farther away from there. We still have to do consultation, which would take in the BIA, would take in all the other events people. It would also take in any neighborhoods nearby. That's what the consultation is all about. But if you remove this from the budget, and it never happens, we cannot do consultation. We will never have an outdoor event space that is on the outskirts of the city where we can start to relieve the people of all of the complaints that we're getting from bylaw. It's up to you guys. Doesn't hurt me in one iota whether you take this away. It's actually the people of the community that you're removing it from. So that's the story behind this, Councillor Hamilton. Any other questions on this one? Councillor Devine.
Yes, thank you. The area that we're speaking about currently, and we just heard all the reasons why we can't do it. But eventually, I would think that area is going to get built up with apartments, with homes, with townhouses around it. So I'm only assuming we're going to have the same problem in the future once the buildings go up. Would that be a safe statement?
In my opinion, yes. If we especially look at the plan to extend the bypass, McQueen-Shaver, all the way up to the 401, if that ever happens. We know it's going up to Main Street, and we see the development already coming in to address that. And then I would expect that, yes, we would see infill and increased density in the area. There'd be both residential, business, possibly industrial, but I don't have a crystal ball.
Okay, thank you.
This land cannot be built on either. Nowhere near it can be built on. Councillor Kimpson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan. I just have a question about this new procedure that we're following tonight. Do we have the opportunity, as we're discussing amongst ourselves, to offer comments as well, or not necessarily a question per se to the councillor presenting the amendment, but do we have the option to sort of have some thinking out loud conversation?
I was told no. That needs to happen at the time of the vote. Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Liggett. Councillor Hamilton, this is not in support or opposition for your amendment. There's still lots we need to learn about this, definitely. But my question is just that we've heard a lot of statements regarding, the noise that's going to be made, and then whether there's going to be development that will eventually catch up to it, and whether that's going to bother any particular neighbors, whether now or in the future. I guess my question to you is, are you saying, I guess wherever we put this, wherever this goes, is potentially going to even attract development, or development is going to catch up to it. So are you concerned at all that using this logic essentially will mean that we're never going to do this? Because if we worry about whether there's development up to it, which is always going to happen, then are we wiping this project out completely? Because I think wherever we put it, development's going to happen around it. So we need to decide, are we going to do it or not?
Well, thank you, Councillor Cooper. I appreciate the question, and it's a very good question. Again, I don't mean to repeat myself, but I think we learned of this, and I learned of this through this budget. So if we need to wait a year to ask these questions, to travel to the spaces ourselves, to seek out the answers, I think it's worth the wait. But I have significant reservations, especially with the very challenging economic climate that we're in, putting down $750,000 plus, because we know it'll be more than that when the construction goes, to approve a project when we haven't, in my mind, gone through the process that we typically do for large-scale capital projects, just to look at plans, to look at the budgets, to look at the noise, to hear public input about it from neighbors as well, which I know we're all especially concerned about. When developments go in, we hear from the public, and I think it's important in this process as well to also have the opportunity to hear from them and learn from them, because what I've heard from neighbors in the area, it's not quite positive. So if we have to delay it a year or two, in my mind, it's worth the wait so we can do our due diligence. And again, we measure twice, we cut once, and that way we'll know we're doing the right thing. But I can't, in my mind, put down that amount of taxpayer money, because ultimately it is from the taxpayers, whether it's from a levy or not, for something that I feel I don't know enough about to confidently recommend to residents of my ward.
Councillor Hamilton, when do you think due diligence should happen? There's no, $750,000 is not in the budget to be spent next year. You keep saying that, but that's not quite correct. So when do you think due diligence should happen on this? When do you think $100,000 should be spent on a consultation with the people?
Thank you, Mayor
Just
Leggett.
curious, thank you.
No problem. In my mind, I think having some knowledge of the event space and having some public consultation of being able to get out and engage people. Because when we think of an event space, there's 9 of us around the table. I bet you we all have 9 different ideas of what that looks like, what it's going to sound like, how many cars are going to be parked there, where the transportation routes are going to be, what the bathrooms will look like, where the food vendors will be. I think ensuring that we take the proper precautions and due diligence to ensure that what council is voting on is uniform, that we all know what we're voting on, that we all share the same vision, that we all have the same understanding and scope. To me, that is important, and that's why I decided to make an amendment to pull this, so we can garner that knowledge together, and if we feel it's worthwhile, to move forward with it.
But isn't that what is being suggested here, is to do that consultation, to do those studies in this 2026 budget? Everything that you're saying needs to be done in the future to make sure that we're doing everything correct and proper. Isn't that what is being asked for in this budget? I think the problem is, in this budget book, $750,000 was put in there to be spent in 2026, which is an error. That should not have been in there, and I think you were informed of that already, were you not? So I'll go back to my question, though. Is that not what is in the budget for 2026 to do exactly what you're asking for?
What I understand is that by moving this right now, we are committing ourselves to spending well over $100,000 for just the consultation. That's a lot of money, considering I think we all have no idea what essentially this is.
So I'm going to follow my line. I see your hands up. I'm just going to follow my line of thought here. But if this doesn't come out of if this comes from MAT tax here, there's no money being spent this year on the tax dollars for the public. The public aren't going to have to pay extra money for this. So at what point do you think that $100,000 should be spent for all of the things you're saying are needed before this could move forward?
Thank you, Mayor Leggett. I think, not to repeat myself, but I don't feel comfortable putting down that kind of money, which ultimately derives from the taxpayer. As we say, there's only one taxpayer, for a project we know essentially nothing about. And that, again, we all around this horseshoe probably have 9 different conceptions as to what this events ground is, how it will function, and whether or not it will be a benefit. So if we have to slow things down and get that understanding so that when we put down, again, $135,200 is still a lot of money, I feel like we could be unified as a council instead of putting down future commitments for very large chunks of change when we don't know what exactly that will bring and the effect it will have.
So the MAT tax, would you agree, though, that that is not taxpayers' money, that that is money that is coming from the accommodations tax? So that's people who have already spent money and provided money in our hotels, and that money comes to us, a portion of that comes to us to be spent on things like this?
Well, it's my understanding, and maybe this goes back to Councillor Cooper's comment as well, where this is the first step towards kicking off that $750,000 plus commitment from the taxpayer.
But what would happen if the consultant comes back and says it's totally the wrong location, it's not going to work? Then do you not think that the rest of the money would not be spent?
I think we can get to that stage before we spend $135,000.
Okay, so how do you think we could get to that stage? I'm just trying to understand where you're coming from, where you're thinking.
Yeah, I'm again, Mayor Liggett, I don't mean to repeat myself, but the budget item is for $750,000, and we know eventually it will kick off the $135,200. We know we'll enter into, if we commit to this, of basically constructing this project that all of us know nothing about. So I don't feel comfortable voting on something that is in my ward that constituents have concerns about that we don't know anything about.
Okay, all of it was going to come from the MAT tax. Councillor Kimson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan, and through you to Councillor Hamilton. In thinking about this situation with the event space and the money going towards sort of some of the exploratory studies and looking into what the event space might look like, what it might be, and so on and so forth, and recognizing that the funding is not coming from the taxpayers, do you feel that if the money wasn't necessarily allocated to the event space project at this time, it may be able to be allocated elsewhere?
It's kind of a rhetorical question, considering we have so many unfunded capital projects in the city. We have a long list of capital projects that we know are going unfunded right now. So could we spend this money elsewhere? Yes, and we have lists of where we could spend it.
Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. This is actually a question for procedure here. There's already been multiple times here where we could have, things could be clarified a lot more with staff, and I know that's going to come up. I'd just like to ask, is there any good reason why we're not being permitted to question staff publicly?
Tonight is about questions and fact-finding, providing each member an opportunity to consider what they are learning. Then on the 24th, they can come back and prior to voting, may comment on the amendment. One of the reasons that staff reached out to every one of you when you were talking about your amendment was to provide you with the opportunity to ask as many questions as possible about your amendments. Some of you took staff up on that, and some of you did not. Some people did not reach out to the correct staff. So the staff, and I'm not saying that that's anybody's fault here. Whoever you reached out to maybe should have moved you on to another staff person who could have provided you with the answers.
Well, that's fine, but that's for the person that's doing the amendment. For others, like now, where we have questions, it would be very useful to be able to ask questions, because you have stated right there that this is about fact-finding. I'm finding it very difficult to get facts when we cannot publicly talk with staff. So I'd just like that noted. Thank you. I think we should be able to talk to staff. This is a good time for that.
It's very different.
Okay, I'm going to ask a question of the CFO. Sheena, could you please explain, following Councillor Cooper's comment about how there's lots of other capital projects that could be funded from the MAT tax, what can be and what cannot be funded, please?
Thank you, Mayor Leggett. Through you, the municipal accommodation tax has the purpose to hold and segregate our city's portion of municipal accommodation tax revenue. So that's revenue that is earned through the portion of funds derived from our municipal accommodation tax as per our bylaw. The funds can be used for a variety of items, notably major festival and event expansion and development, one-time festival, sport and event acquisition costs. There's infrastructure for sport and festival events, permanent or one-time in nature. And the funding target is to remain in a positive funding position.
Thank you. Councillor Devine, you have a question of Councillor Cooper? Councillor Hamilton?
Yeah, I do. Councillor Hamilton, what is the MAT tax funded at right now? Do we know? How much is in that fund?
I couldn't tell you what it's at right now.
Maybe staff could tell me? How much is in the fund?
Sheena, could you tell them what's in that account right now? I think it's around 12 million or something, but because we just had this conversation.
Thank you. Through the mayor, the current balance in the municipal accommodation tax reserve is 1.55 million. There are commitments and some revenues projected through 2026 with the commitment of the $750,000 project in question tonight. The residual balance would be 1.135 million by the end of 2026.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sheena. I was thinking of the CATA fund. Yeah. Councillor, go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, and just to add some clarification for Councillor Cooper and other members of council. Tonight, as mentioned, you're not making decisions, you're having debate. You're discussing the amendment with the councillor who put the amendment on the floor to find out what their objective, what their intent, to find out any of that information. Should you have questions of staff, you can have an opportunity to have questions and answers provided to staff after the meeting, and we're more than happy to provide you with any of those answers before you make a final decision on these amendments on November 24th.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor Jan. Sorry, but I'm just going to follow up with Councillor Cooper's question, because I think that we do have a right to ask questions of staff. I think that especially those of us that reached out to staff and didn't get our questions answered in a timely manner, because I know, Mayor Jan, you had mentioned that we should reach out to staff, and many of us did, and I understand staff have been inundated with questions, but it's going to be quite difficult for some of us to get the information we need to make I know we're not making a decision tonight, but just to have the right information in our heads without being able to ask questions of staff. So that's it.
Councillor Kimson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan. I have a concern with what's going on right now. A number of us submitted our amendments following the process that was outlined to us and by the deadline, and we were notified on Friday afternoon that we could not bring our amendments forward because they did not meet the criteria. Following each of us reaching out to staff over the weekend and meeting with staff either virtually or in person today, we are now able to bring our amendments forward, which we're doing, but it's simply put us in a position where we are interrogating one another without having factual information that we would otherwise be able to get from staff, because at no other time have we had a council meeting when we haven't been able to ask staff questions. So I'm very concerned with what's going on right now. I don't find it helpful, and I'm wondering if we could perhaps look into what we're doing and give consideration as to whether or not this really is productive.
Thank you, Councillor Kimson. I'm going to take a break while I speak to staff about exactly that, if you don't mind. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for the recess, and we did a quick little regroup to assess and try to help council as much as possible. So what we're going to kind of pivot towards, we still are suggesting that this should be a debate amongst council members. It's your amendment. It's your amendment to have discussions on and make decisions on at that next meeting. That said, if we can provide a layer of support with some answers to some questions, we are here to do our best. If we can't provide you with the specific answer to a very specific or detailed question, then we'll do our best to get back to you directly tomorrow via email. Thank you.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor Jan. Many of the issues that we're having with events in our parks and other spaces, I believe, have come from our lack of a fulsome noise bylaw and events policy. So I wonder if we can ask staff where things are at with those two items, because I think that if we can have those in place, we might be able to find a way to utilize our park space, as was recommended in our Parks Master Plan, as one of the action items was to better utilize our major parks and the rec complex when it's done for some of our larger scale events, while keeping in mind the sanctity of the neighborhoods around them. So basically, where are we at with the noise bylaw and the events policy? I guess potentially Hardy and bylaw?
Through you, Your Worship, currently we're tentatively scheduled for Q1 of 2026.
Are there any other questions? I have a question of Councillor Hamilton. Are you willing to put the study in 2026 rather than just leave everything, cancel everything?
Thank you, Mayor Liggett. I'm comfortable leaving it as it is for now. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Next is Councillor Schwery, you have an amendment to do with the Soper Park recreational facility.
Thank you, Mayor Liggett. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Earnshaw, that the proposed budget amendment for council to consider that project A01483-40 Soper Park Outdoor Recreation Complex be removed and deferred to the 2027 budget for consideration. I will read my rationale and then I have some comments. The rationale for the proposed amendment: the current city budget, in my opinion, doesn't seem to align with what taxpayers are telling us what they want. We keep adding new assets when we're already struggling to maintain what we have. Residents have been clear about their priorities: fixing roads, maintaining infrastructure, and supporting economic growth. Yet much of this budget doesn't reflect that. We currently have $157 million infrastructure gap in Cambridge, and we can't keep increasing property taxes to the point where it's becoming unbearable for residents. Our spending needs to focus on needs before wants. We should be deferring all non-essential park and recreation projects, new projects, until we make real progress reducing our debt and closing the infrastructure gap. And because I was told first I won't present it tonight, my notes are a bit jumbled, so please bear with me. Now, the Soper Park recreational complex is scheduled for 2027, but it will be going on debt, growth debt. We already have about $80 million or more in debt, and I don't have the exact amount of interest we are paying on that debt, but it is significant, important for taxpayers to know. We have also upcoming financial pressures. The Riverside Dam project for 2029, $20 million today, who knows what it will be in 2029. The proposed LRT extension, potentially $30+ million. Currently, we also have on the Town Line Road, about 12 million. There's the Black Bridge and Black Bridge roads. So there's a lot of pressures coming up on the taxpayers. And the main requests that I receive from my constituents in the emails is, as a counselor, since I became a counselor, was for basic practical work, traffic calming, speed bumps. It's very difficult and expensive to get a speed bump, but we're spending on other things. Cleaner and better maintained parks, more vibrant bylaw enforcement, lower taxes, and the upkeep of the infrastructure we already have. And that's not it. So we added a 1% levy to the property taxes because the infrastructure gap was so wide, and we keep blaming it on previous mayors and councils. But what are we doing to fix it? We have to focus more on that and then starting new projects. Because in my opinion, just because somebody has more room on their credit card doesn't mean that we should spend more. And in our homes, we delay stuff. Yes, things might cost more, but I can't say, well, I'm getting company, so I need new furniture. Well, guess what? Maybe I don't get that furniture, and I have to wait because I can't increase property taxes to pay for something I may want. And we really have to really think of the taxpayers. There's a lot of stuff we want, but can we afford it all? And I don't believe in adding more debt because, for example, something might cost more next year. Well, that saying could have applied to Riverside Dam, and nothing happened there. So for that reason, I'm bringing this forth, because I truly care for those that are struggling, and maybe we need to put needs before wants. Thank you.
Are there any questions from council? Councillor Cooper.
I do actually have a quick one, and this is referring to, needs versus wants. This is actually one, if you don't mind, it's very important. I have to ask for staff. If this is a kind of nice to have, and I'm not saying it is, I know what's going there, it's going to be nice, but if this were delayed, what condition is what's there right now? Can anybody speak to that?
Leslie?
Through you, Mayor Liggett, to Councillor Cooper. So Soper Pool has been closed due to condition. We closed the facility because it was non-operational, so it is not working. And the other elements of that project, I'll just list off what is part of that, which we put all into one project, was the larger pool house itself, four-season public access washroom facility, the parking lot, and then, of course, the pool placement. So we do not have those elements in the park as of right now. It also includes the upgrade to the splash pad. So the splash pad on the other end of Soper Park is needing to be replaced. This is recommissioning this down on the other end.
Are all these areas, it's been a while since I've been there, I apologize, are all these areas fenced off right now?
Yes, they are. They're not accessible by the public.
Okay, thank you.
Leslie, does this not also include the playground equipment?
Sorry, Your Worship, yes. It's encompassing all of the projects for Soper Park into one project. So we have completed detailed design. This is now construction.
Okay, and was there consultation done with the public?
Through you, Mayor Liggett, there has been extensive consultation that has taken place since 2021 on this project, which has outlined the desire, need, and want from the public for this facility.
Thank you. Councillor Schwery, are you aware that since this started that we have 99 new housing units right next door to the park, and that there is also over 100 new housing units of affordable housing also going next to the park?
Mayor Liggett, no, I was not aware of that, but the reason I still feel that this is a want and not a need I did not ask in Rivermill, which has, gonna have close to 4,000 homes, for anything this year, because I thought we're gonna suck it up and lessen the burden on taxpayers. I did not ask for that basketball court that would cost $150,000 just for this reason. So there's a lot more people. I understand. That's why I'm not saying no, I'm saying defer it, and maybe we can look at it, and maybe not everything has to be done all at once, but I would like it deferred. Thank you.
So if I'm following your reasoning, because those newer houses that have gone in there, this is an existing park, these are existing facilities that have to be replaced because they cannot be used any longer. And this has been going on since 2021. This is not a new project. This is one that you want stopped in the middle of the stream. Is that correct?
I'm asking it to be deferred for consideration next year is what I'm asking.
So stop midstream. Thank you. Okay, next up is our next budget amendment. Oh, sorry, Councillor Devine, I'm sorry I missed you.
Yes, can you tell me if this work has already been started and has it been contracted? Can anybody tell me that?
There's just bid, no contract.
There we go. Sorry, Mayor Liggett. Through you to Councillor Devine. So we have completed detailed design, but we have not tendered for construction yet. This is the approval of the construction portion of this project.
So it's not been tendered at this point?
That is correct.
Thank you.
Okay, next up is the budget amendment concerning the old post office projector equipment. Councillor Roberts, could you please put your amendment on the floor?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Jan. And through you, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Earnshaw. The proposed budget amendment for council to consider is that project A/01300-50 old post office projection equipment be removed from the 2026 budget and deferred to 2027. And I can speak to the rationale of this. So we do have a current projector on there, and while it is reaching near the end of its life, it is still functional. I have spent quite a bit of time down there and do see the projections working. I've spoken with some of the folks who are involved in some of those projections, and it seems to be adequately meeting our needs, especially based on the fact that we haven't really been marketing it very heavily. So given the $624,000 cost of replacement and those broader economic challenges that we're facing, including an extensive infrastructure gap, I don't think it's a necessary expense at this time, even though it will be funded from the infrastructure reserve fund and not directly on the tax levy. We do have a lot of other things that we could use that for. And we can continue to maintain this existing equipment and revisit the issue in a future budget cycle if replacement becomes essential.
Sheena, could you please confirm what fund this comes out of? It's the CATA funding, correct?
This 2026 project has been slated to be funded from our infrastructure renewal fund.
Which is part of the CATA, correct? Oh, no, okay.
It's one of our capital funding reserve funds.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions? Okay, see none there. Next budget item concerns the civic facility space study. Councillor Kimpson, you have that amendment?
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Schwery. The proposed budget amendment for council to consider that project A/01766-20 civic facility space study be removed from the 2026 budget. My rationale for such is that there are currently renovations underway at the City Hall main campus. We also have a new recreation complex that's set to open in the fall of 2026, where certainly while there'll be new staff working in that building, there may also be the opportunity for other staff to be on site. I'd like to see this project deferred until the renovations are complete at City Hall. The new recreation complex is open and operating, as that will provide a more accurate assessment of current and future space needs for employees.
Is there somebody that can speak to that?
Through you, Madam Mayor, is there a specific question you want me to touch on, or just in general?
Just 1 second. Can you say again how you said something else, but you want this deferred, or what did you want?
I've asked, through you, Mayor Jan, I've asked to have this removed from the 2026 budget. And if we can defer the project until the renovations at City Hall are complete and the new recreation complex is open and operating, it would provide a more accurate assessment of current and future space needs. So when I look at the page in the budget document for the Civic Facility Space Study, it's page 175, it has an anticipated project start date of the 1st of January 2026 and a project completion date of the 31st of January 2026. So really the bulk of this project is going to be completed before the recreation complex opens. So I feel that it's premature to begin this project at this time. As the project description describes, this project involves a civic facility space study to assess current and future space needs for employees across city-owned buildings and recommend ways to optimize space use.
I asked because that's a different amendment than the one that you put forward. You asked for it to be deferred to the 2027 budget, but you're saying to be removed totally.
So in my email with Acting Clerk Jen Shaw, when my amendment was submitted, she asked to clarify the wording with me. And on Thursday, November 13th, I responded, I would like to have them removed from 2026 and be deferred for consideration in the 2027 budget. And that was acknowledged.
Okay, thank you. That's not, I see it up on the screen, it's just not what I have been given in front of me, so that's why I wanted that clarification. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor Jan, and through you, the amendments that were provided to everyone tonight are actually different from what were submitted, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. So who's able to answer this on the civic space? Whatever you can, Leslie, is fine. I know you're not the one who does this, but.
No, through you, Mayor Jane, I'm happy to. I just didn't know if there was a specific question or you wanted me to talk about the project in general or what I can provide some context to.
How about anything you wanted to say?
Sure. Through you, Mayor Jane, I'll just provide that this is a study to help support the future of civic facilities in terms of staffing. Yes, there are several projects on the go right now, which is supporting our return to work for staff. We want to look at future space for City Hall. What does that look like? How are we accommodating future growth on the campus here? And that's what this study is looking at. I will comment that, yes, the rec center is slated to open in 2026, but we do not have any available space for staffing there. What is accommodated there for administration will be taken up by staffing positions associated with the center itself. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? I see none. Okay, our last budget item amendment concerns the brand renewal. Councillor Kimpson, can you please read your amendment?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much, Mayor Jan. This is moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Roberts. A Proposed budget amendment for council to consider that Project A/01609-40 brand renewal be removed from the 2026 budget. This can be found on page 154 of people's budget documents, and I do not feel it's a necessary expenditure at this time.
Are you able to speak a little bit more to that so we can understand?
Certainly.
Thank you.
Certainly, through you, Mayor Jan. So this is, according to the project description, it will include development of a modernized logo and sub-brands for various city facility and services. The project team will coordinate the replacement of the old brand with the new across the city, including at City Hall, equipment fleet, and community centers, and will provide the new brand guidelines on how it should be used, placed, and formatted. These costs are for research, design, and development. Replacement costs will be contemplated separately. The justification is to foster a professional image for the city and provide consistency for tourism and economic development purposes. And it has a cost of $208,000, and it's coming from the, it says here the capital levy and the capital works reserve.
Thank you. Councillor Devine?
Yes, can anyone tell me what the replacement cost is going to be, replacing these logos on all our equipment, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, and branding? What would that cost be?
Could someone speak to that, please?
Through you, Madam Mayor, we don't have an estimate on the replacement cost at this point. This work would be to initiate a strategy to rebrand, to go through a rebranding exercise. So that would give us a kind of framework to work from in terms of cost estimates for replacement of all equipment. Because we'd also have to undertake an audit of the equipment and signage and branding that we would need to replace.
Do we not think we should have those figures before we proceed with this? Because this looks to me like it's the tip of the iceberg. I think we should have those figures. In fact, I know we should have those figures.
Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Liggett. I mean, this is about rebranding. What kind of decision went into deciding that what we have right now is not good? I see our branding, it looks pretty good. What logic went into saying we need to do this?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So the city's current corporate brand was developed nearly a decade ago and no longer reflects a modern identity or changes that the city has undergone since. And a refreshed brand is proposed to be included in the 2026 budget forecast, aligning with several of the council endorsed priorities, including enhancing customer experience, improving digital modernization, older adult strategy, strengthening community engagement and trust, and aligning internal and external communications. So the hope is that any engagement that we would do would include brand renewal, a brand renewal process requiring meaningful engagement across the organization. I can say that deferring this, it does, like we are already seeing some equipment and some signage with aging brand and sub-brands attached to them. And so this creates inconsistency across the municipality. So the hope is that modernizing this and making it consistent would bring us kind of a little more up to date. We currently have 4 different brands on signage across the city with varying colors. So we're just looking to bring some consistency forward to this.
Okay.
Councillor Devine?
We can bring consistency to this without rebranding. Okay, if we've got different signs, different colors, and we go with the current, what we currently have. All right? It's not going to change. If we rebrand, what's going to change? All right, maybe new logo. All the vehicles aren't going to get done. We'll be in the same situation we are now. let's stick with what we have. And if we got an issue with vehicles and branding and signs, then we need to do an inventory of what needs to be done. Thank you.
Councillor Cooper.
Yeah, I'd just like to second that. I'm not sure if this is something that's necessarily required, despite the elaborate explanations here. May I remind you that the most successful brand in history, most valuable brand in history, is Coca-Cola. They haven't changed their logo since the beginning. That was about 120 odd years ago. Just thought I'd say that. You're welcome.
Since when? Since when?
Oh, I don't know when it was, 120,
When did
130 years ago.
when did the polar bear come into play?
Oh, that's an advertising
There you
gimmick.
go,
That's different.
see? Okay, so a reminder, we're not voting on these this evening. Do members of council have any more questions of each other? Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor Jan. I'm just still confused on the process that we're not voting on these tonight. So it was my understanding that we need to vote on them. I know it's not clearly explicit in our bylaw, but it doesn't say that we're allowed to keep motions open past the end of a meeting. And I'm just confused. And what happens if nobody else brings any other amendments forward? We're just going to have a meeting, and then are we going to have this whole debate all over again? Like, I'm just a little confused with this process.
Through the mayor to Councillor Roberts, so the intent is that tonight you would debate the motions that have been brought forward this evening. At the next meeting, they would be voted on, so you would not be reopening them for debate at the next meeting. This is the same process we followed last year, if you'll recall. So the amendments were put forward at the first meeting, they were debated at that time, and then they were voted on at the second meeting. So all the amendments got voted on at the same time at the second meeting.
Okay, thank you.
And just to say, it's just a continuation of the same meeting, so it's not a close of any meeting to this point in time. It's just, and it also gives you time to get more information, should you, or if you want more questions of staff or each other as well. Councillor Earnshaw.
Yes, Mayor Liggett, thank you. I've been wondering with the evolution of the process and protocol here, whether this is something that will make its way into our procedural bylaw. I know it's constantly under review, but since it seems to have changed somewhat from past years.
I would say it's an evolutionary process because we've never had to deal with this type of legislation before, and all cities are going through the same thing where they're trying to figure out next steps as well. So as things don't work out, they get changed for the next year, but at some point, you're right, it does have to be written down, but Ms. Shaw is going to respond to that.
Yes, through the mayor to Councillor Earnshaw. So we have been discussing that very point through our procedure bylaw check-in meetings with council and looking to add more content around the strong mayor budget process. So that is something that we hope to do, is formalize this process a little bit better within the procedure bylaw.
Just to add to that comment, so just to maybe give a little bit more reassurance, through various associations like AMCTO, as well as AMO, as well as OMAA, there's a variety of different conversations happening on how best to actually implement this new budget process. So, we are kind of building the plane as it's flying in many ways. But we do actually really want your input as well in terms of how to make this most efficient. The common goal or the principle in all of this is good governance. So we want to make sure that when council members are making decisions, they have all the information in hand in order to be able to make that decision. So a good governance approach needs to be taken. So we are definitely looking for your input as well as we continually refine the process.
Councillor Kimson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan. Please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that last year we did vote after the first meeting because the idea of the second amendment meeting was only if there were more amendments to come forward. And it would be scheduled if necessary. I'm just trying to look in my calendar to go back and see, but I thought that that was something where in the process, we weren't sure how many meetings we would actually need to have because it would depend on whether or not it came forward.
Mr. Axiak's going to respond to that.
Through you, Mayor. So I wasn't here last year, so we can definitely look into figure out what was actually in place last year. But what I will say for next budget meeting, if you can imagine that the first half of it will be for any other amendments that come forward. So we'll do the same thing that we just did today for the first half of the next meeting. The second half of the meeting will be to do a final vote. So we will be putting them up on the screen, all of the amendments on a spreadsheet, and you'll be able to see the tax rate implication for each of those respective amendments. So you'll vote on them one at a time, and you'll see it live in terms of what the tax rate increase would actually look like. So I think that would actually help the public as well understand the voting process and where we end up by the end of the meeting.
Through the mayor to Councillor Kimson's question, if you'll recall last year, there were a number of park-related amendments that came forward between the first and the second meeting. And at the second meeting, there was further discussion about those park amendments before they were withdrawn. And at that time, the other amendments that were in play were also voted on. So the voting took place at the second meeting.
Thank you for checking that. If I may also just follow up with the second part to that question, or do you want me to ask at the end? Thank you. At our next meeting next week, will staff have the ability to answer questions on the new amendments, if any are brought forward, as they did for all the other amendments after Councillor Hamilton?
Through you, Madam Mayor. So yes, we'll follow the same format that we did tonight. So we did pivot, and we'll continue to pivot for next week. But please, I still continue to encourage, please ask your questions of staff, meet with staff if you have an amendment coming forward, because at the end of the day, it is your amendment that you should have all the necessary information for. It shouldn't be staff here having to validate it, but we will answer any support questions for sure that you might have, but please do meet with staff prior.
Thank you. I think Councillor Hamilton did a fine job of winging it on his own, so thank you.
Councillor Schwery.
Thank you, Mayor Liggett. I have a question and a request. I can ask my question and come back, but when we got the response, your amendment does not meet the criteria. Can you explain what you meant by that? Because it came back in the same pretty much wording, but you said it didn't meet the criteria. What does that mean? Does that mean because you added some new rules?
I'll start, and then the clerk can continue on through you, Chair. So criteria we're putting in place to make sure that when amendment does hit the floor, that it is fully informed, so that council knows what you're debating, and that the mayor or the councillor who's bringing the amendment forward also has all of that information to provide, and it is an actual debate. I know that might have seemed a little uncomfortable tonight, but it is your amendment that this council has to debate. So we wanted to make sure that there was some criteria established, like meet with staff, discuss it with staff, not for us to approve it by any means, but for us to provide you with all the necessary information you need. So that's why we put some criteria to it, just to make it a little bit clearer for members of council who are putting forward an amendment. So I'll turn it over to the clerk who could provide that criteria.
And just through the mayor to Councillor Schwery, so in your addendum package that you received on Friday, there was some additional content in there. There were 2 slides that speak to what a budget amendment is and what it is not. So just to go over that, so a budget amendment is a formal change to the proposed municipal budget that alters funding allocations or financial assumptions. Under the Municipal Act 2001 and Strong Mayor legislation, an amendment must change dollar amounts for a program, service, or capital project, reallocate funds between budget lines, and identify funding sources. So for example, reserve versus grants to maintain a balanced budget. A budget amendment is not a direction to staff to report back or to undertake work, so that should be a separate motion. A direction should be a separate motion brought forward at a separate time from the budget. A budget amendment is not policy statements or general priorities without financial impact. It is not requests for operational changes that do not alter funding levels. It is not future year considerations outside of the current budget cycle, nor is it service level discussions without specifying cost changes. So to be considered an amendment, it must include a clear financial adjustment, so an increase, decrease, or reallocation, and maintain compliance with the balanced budget requirement.
Thank you. And can I just follow up on everything you said? Or I can come back? All right, well, I'm glad you talked about that, because one thing that bothered me, when I kept hearing, it won't affect the budget, it won't affect it. It's coming out of this fund, or it's coming out of that reserve fund. All these funds are paid by taxpayer dollars. And also, if you say, well, if it doesn't affect this year's budget, we're not going to do it. Well, what we can do is take non-discretionary reserve funds and put it into the rate stabilization and take that and reduce the budget. So it just bothers me that when I hear there's no implication to the tax rate, but it can be because all that money was put in there, and non-discretionary can be taken out. So I just want to make that very clear, because when I think it's not clear to even the taxpayers, and it may not be clear to people listening. Thank you.
Cheryl, could you please respond to that about Councillor Schwery is saying that all of it is paid by the taxpayers, and I know that it's not. Can you please respond to what isn't? Sheena, sorry.
Thank you, Mayor Liggett. Through you, I don't have the comprehensive list per se of all of our, we have so many various reserve and reserve funds, but most certainly there are many reserves that are not tax supported. We spoke at the last meeting about our core area transformation fund. I'll use that as an example in this case. That reserve is funded through a transfer from our economic development reserve, which was from industrial land sales. So that's just one example, but there are various reserves such as the municipal accommodation tax that I spoke about earlier this evening, also not funded from the taxpayers.
Perhaps at some point you could send a list to council. I know we go through it every single budget, but sometimes it's not all absorbed. Councillor Devine.
Yes, thank you through the chair. That land, the industrial land that was sold, I'd just like to get that on the table. That's land that was purchased by the city, resold, okay, and there's a fund there, all right? So theoretically, yes, it's paid through the taxpayer, that one. MAT tax, that's a totally different thing. But the one thing that concerned me, I've been on council for, well, 11 years now, all right? And this strong mayor legislation, I have trouble with it. I have trouble with it. This budget should be done by council. All right, it should be done by council, and I hope to God this strong mayor legislation doesn't last, because it flies in the face of democracy, in my opinion. Thank you.
I'm going to speak to that, Councillor Devine. The only difference here is that I sit in the meetings with staff from June till now and listen to what they have to say. The book that comes to you is exactly the same book that came back then. And it's exactly the same thing. You have the same rights all the way through as you did 3 years ago. There is no difference. The only difference is that when an amendment hits the floor, I have the ability to veto it. But then you have the ability to veto my veto. So that's the difference. I'm just saying that it's not really changed as much as what everybody thinks that it has. And the money from the tax sale, I think, is what Sheena was speaking about. Yes, the land was purchased by taxpayers, but the profit itself went into a fund. That profit was not money that was taken out of taxpayers' bank accounts. To purchase the property, yes, but that difference, that income that came off of that went into a separate fund, and that's what she's trying to say here. It's just an educational thing. Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Liggett, and through you, and this question might be for Mr. Axiak. But I was wondering, under 6.1 of the Municipal Act 2001, there seems to be very general prescriptions for strong mayor powers. Like, mayors can propose a municipal budget which would be subject to council amendments and a mayoral veto, and council can override the process. But at the more granular level, in terms of the actual process we're seeing and the criteria, I think, as Councillor Schwery described it, is that something that is up to every municipality to figure out on its own right now? Or is what we are doing and the way we're passing our amendments to the next meeting, or sorry, passing our votes to the next meeting, is that what every strong mayor municipality is doing, or is that something we have chosen to do? Because I do agree with some of the councillors, it's been somewhat of a confusing weekend, because I'd thought all weekend that I would not be discussing this tonight, and I found out about half hour before the meeting started. So I winged it, as Councillor Kimson described it, but I'm just wondering, is this a result of individual choices municipalities are making, or just the freshness of this process that every municipality has to work through together?
Through you, Mayor. So great question, and I could say that every municipality I've worked for or know of is going through the same type of process in terms of trying to figure it out. So in the legislation, you'll see some generalities, like council can bring forward an amendment. Is the word amendment actually defined? No. So we're trying to figure out, so what does that mean? Is that like a motion, or is that something different? So we are all trying to figure it out, all municipalities. We are following kind of a core set of principles when it comes to this, like good governance as an example. So as staff, we want to make sure you have all the information to make sound decisions. That's what our role is. So every municipality is following the legislation, but is implementing it a little bit different than each other. There are organizations like AMCTO that are really helping try to kind of put some, consistency with this. But in terms of the actual process itself, yeah, every municipality is adjusting based on their own specific needs. That's why it's really important for members of council to understand what the rules are as per the legislation, like 30 days, the mayor proposes a budget, like those are all hard rules. But in terms of how we implement them, we need to hear from members of council on how best we should implement them. So your feedback is pretty critical. Thank you.
Councillor Kimson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan, and certainly I appreciate that it's, the onus is on council to understand the process and what's going on. I'm wondering if in the report that council received on October the 14th, where we had the presentation about the strong mayor budget process and the timelines that we approve, was there mention of the criteria in here? And that we learned about on November the 14th. I'm just wondering during that month's time how we managed to miss that, unless I'm missing something in the initial report.
Through you, Mayor. So no, from what I understand, it was not as part of that level of detail on that date that you had recommended. We started to put the criteria together based on what other municipalities were also doing, based on what we were seeing in terms of amendments coming forward. So I'll give an example. An amendment came forward that started to talk about directing staff to come back with a report. Well, that's not an actual budget amendment. That's a motion, as mentioned by the clerk. So this is where we started to look around to say, okay, what's the criteria that other municipalities are using to help our councils further define what an amendment looks like? And that's when we started to put together those respective lists.
Thank you.
Councillor Schwery.
Mayor Liggett, I just want to go back to a comment that was made about the profit from land sales, or it would be no different than interest earned on reserve accounts. All of that money, I don't believe it's it's to go back to the taxpayers, maybe to reduce debt or reduce the infrastructure. And just to say, well, it doesn't cost anything, it's their money and they should have a choice. Or saying like, oh, don't worry, it's covered by development charges. But development charges, if there's a gap, like I'm seeing, that means that you're gonna have to increase development charges and now make it even more expensive for homes to be built. So it just, for me, bothers me when I see stuff like, it doesn't cost, it's development charges, you know, it's from the profit. All that money should be, you know, the council should make decisions on that, and the taxpayers, and maybe put that towards, you know, reducing taxes or the other items I mentioned. But when we say stuff it doesn't cost, well, it's not our money to decide, it's all taxpayer money. Thank you.
Through you, Mayor, and just maybe to provide a little bit of context to that, and maybe for the public as well. When the mayor had proposed what her budget would look like, it was coming in, I believe, at a 4.86%. And we just talked about what assessment growth, the improvement on assessment growth, and that number has come down. So when we as staff are looking at your amendments that are coming forward and they are not funded by the tax base, that means they don't impact the 4.86%, that they're funded from a different source, whether that be development charges, whether that be a reserve account, whether that be debt. What we're saying is that it's not impacting the 4.86 on the tax levy. It's still taxpayers' dollars, you are correct. It's coming out of a different fund. So we're not saying it doesn't cost anything. Of course, it all costs something. What we're saying is that it's no direct impact on the 4.86 that the mayor was initially proposing. Hopefully that clarifies.
And I'm going to add to that, Councillor Schwery. Council always makes the decision when there's monies like that, where it goes. We made a decision on CADF, we make a decision on MAT tax. That's a decision council makes as a whole on where those funds are going to go, what type of fund it's going to become and what they can be used for. So it is always a council decision in the end. Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Liggett. Just going to refer back to this criteria. If I were to bring in an amendment at the next meeting and it qualified in all aspects, you know, where it's going to be funded, it affects the levy, but I hadn't talked to staff, would that not meet the criteria to be an amendment?
Through you, Mayor, so yes, it would not, because we are suggesting meet with us so that you have all the relevant information, so that when you're putting that information on the floor in public and ready to debate with your fellow councillors, that you have all of the information. So that's why we're saying meet with us, not to be your approver. It's just so that you have all of the information, so when asked questions from your peers, that you have the correct response.
Okay, I have a serious problem with that. I have a very big problem with that. We have a job to do, a job we're elected to do. To say that we can't do something as serious as a budget amendment is because we didn't talk to somebody. I don't recall anything telling us that budget amendments require the approval of staff. We just had read to us by the city clerk, and am I correct in thinking, clerk, that you read to us from the municipal, sorry, what's it called, from 2001? Yeah, municipal act. There was obvious criteria in there that's understandable. I didn't hear anything in there that stated part of the criteria from the municipal act is that we have to talk to staff. I feel this is overreach. I don't think it's necessary. I feel something as simple as a request for us to talk to staff, because it does make sense. There's nothing wrong with being educated on this. But I think simply a request to say, could you please talk with staff so that you're educated on it, would have been appropriate. I think it's entirely inappropriate that it's actually been taken to a level where if we don't do that, you don't get to put that amendment down. I have a very, very serious problem with that.
Councillor Mehta.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor Jan. Through you, I have to say I'm concerned about that as well. But my question is, have we discussed this with the minister, or can we do that to get some clarity on how the process should proceed? And I appreciate we're trying to still navigate our way through the process, but have we talked to the province to find out exactly how we should be doing this? Thank you.
Through you, Mayor. So our typical avenues when speaking with the province would be through a delegation at the AMO conference. That's when we would be having conversations regarding how best to proceduralize these types of items. Just keep in note is that legislation isn't necessarily a procedure. It provides what the legislative outline is, and then it's up to each respective council to pass procedural guidelines as a result of that. So again, we're kind of making the plane as it's flying, so we are looking for your feedback on how best to go about this.
Councillor Devine.
Thank you, through the chair. Well, this plane's been flying for a long time. I'd just like to touch on the Core Area Transformation Fund, okay? Just so, I think I went through this once before, but just so everybody understands it. There's $20 million put in a fund for core area transformation that all three cores have benefited from, that council voted on it. It wasn't just thrown into a fund willy-nilly. The council of the day voted on it. All right, came to council, you can dig the records out if you want, but it wasn't done willy-nilly by staff. Okay, and there's, well, 3 people left that voted on it, but it's not something just come out of the friggin' blue. All right, and for the most part, it's been used properly. There's a couple of issues I have with it, but it's, for the most part, it's been used properly. Okay, just so we understand one another.
Councillor Kimpson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan. I think what we're seeing here is that this council has truly been listening to residents who are concerned about the rising costs. And while we're not able to control grocery costs and insurance costs, we can control the tax rate and how the city's reserve funds are spent. And I think given our economic climate, which is very uncertain, we need to be prudent, and we need to even more so rein in our spending. And just because we have the money doesn't mean we have to spend it. And I think that's something where Councillor Schwery makes a very good point about looking at some of these amendments that have come forward for some of these projects that maybe aren't necessary now or in the future, but that's up for people to decide. But then we can take the money there and we can reallocate it where possible to help make things more affordable and hopefully provide a little bit of breathing room for our community.
Councillor Roberts.
Thank you, Mayor Jan. I just have a question. So Mr. Axiak, you had mentioned that on the next meeting, you will have like a chart that shows the amendments and the impact on the tax levy. Can we ask that it also shows any impact savings from those reserve funds? Because as you just stated, you know, it all is taxpayer money and it comes from the same place. So I think that it, you know, from a transparency point of view, it makes sense to have it all laid out there. And then potentially when it comes to something like the event space, even like operating costs. I mean, I know it's early days there, but at least indicating that future operating costs may be connected with this project, just so that we can have a real understanding of all of the potential costs from each of these proposed amendments.
Through you, Mayor. So it will become a big chart if we put a lot of columns into it, but I understand where you're going. What we have to focus on as per the legislation is that we are talking about in-year budget. So if we're talking about the 2026 budget, we need to stay focused on the 2026. We can't start adding 2027 columns, 2028 columns for other operating costs at this particular point. We could definitely look into seeing, you know, in terms of the dollar figure that would be saved in a particular reserve or a DC, or not taking out debt. We can look to see what that could look like. I don't want to overcomplicate things for the public by any means, but if this is council's wishes to show certain information up there for 2026, then we'll do as council wishes.
I'm sorry, I think Councilor Roberts had a follow-up.
I did have a follow-up, but my mic turned off, I'm sorry. Sorry, you couldn't hear me, my mic was off. So sorry, just to be clear, I wasn't meaning that you have to tell us how much the operating costs are, but just indicating if a specific project, like the event space, for example, clearly would have operating costs in the future. So just indicating that. I'm not asking you to ballpark what the operating costs would be, but we could have one column, tax levy implications, and then one reserve fund implications. That's probably as simple as we need it. Thank you.
Councillor Schwery.
Thank you, Mayor Liggett. Just to be clear, so today's amendments, we vote at our next amendment meeting, but next amendment meeting, the new amendments, we vote that same day.
That's correct.
And if I could just follow up, just clarify, when is the last day we can put our second, our amendments for the 24th? Just want to make sure.
Through the mayor to Councillor Schwery, the amendments for the 24th will be due Thursday, this Thursday by noon.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Kimpson.
Thank you very much, Mayor Jan, and through you. Echoing Councillor Roberts' question and comments about future sort of operating costs, there may be something this year that doesn't have operating costs. It might be a study or something, or it might be building something, but we also have to look at what are our costs going to be as far as staff and as we move forward. And when we look at this budget, there's a number of new staff positions that are in there, both the changes in the FTEs as well as the different staff changes on page 209. And when we look at when we add new projects or and beyond to our city, how that affects things overall, and whether or not it's simply the expense of the project or what it's going to be moving forward. So I'm very pleased with Councillor Roberts in asking that that be identified.
Councillor Hamilton.
Thank you, Mayor Liggett, and through you. And I agree with my fellow councillors. There are 9 elected people that sit around this horseshoe, and we owe it to all of our constituents to represent them as best we can. And our procedure bylaw says we represent the public, and part of our primary role is to maintain the financial integrity of the municipality. And so I think having these fulsome discussions and debates is absolutely essential to the budgetary process and the core of our municipal democracy. I do agree with Councillor Roberts and other councillors that have been asking questions pertaining to budget items and the potential future costs, right? So it's not, if you buy a car, it's not just what's the sticker tag today, it's what's the maintenance, how much are parts going to cost. So I think that's essential with some of the items that we have discussed tonight. So if staff could have those available for future budgets or amendments, I think that would go great ways towards perhaps alleviating some concerns or maybe even eliciting them, depending on the cost that those projects would incur for future residents and even future generations. But my question would have to be, and this goes back to something Councillor Cooper was talking about, maybe if we could have clarification at the next meeting or other meetings around, and I love our staff are amazing, I engage them all the time as we all do, but as my understanding under the Municipal Act that council can make and propose amendments, even if it is on the fly, without necessarily consulting staff, because that's part of our job. I think that's in the Municipal Act and part of our procedure bylaw. So I think if we're going to be altering that, we should definitely have clearer criteria per se as to how that could function and whether or not that's something that we as a council would have to approve. I'm just not clear on that.
Through you, Mayor. So I thought I was definitely clear that we are not your approvers on any of these. That's not our job to do. Our job as staff is to provide you with supporting information so that you can make sound debates and have sound decisions. So that's why we put that in as a criteria. Meet with us so we can help you as much as we possibly can get all the information you need for your amendment. So, if you choose not to, that's your prerogative as well. We are highly encouraging. It makes good governance sense for you to do that, to get all the information to make sound decisions.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Councillor Cooper.
Yes, thank you, Mayor Liggett. I'm sorry, I have to counter that. You state that you're not our approvers, and you're stating that you'd like us to talk to you, and that is fine, but the fact remains that if we don't, our amendment doesn't qualify. And that's the problem I know I have, and I think others have. So maybe you're not approving these amendments at the end when we vote, but you are approving whether they even become amendments, whether they're permissible as amendment, and that's where I have a problem.
Councillor Devine.
Yes, and thank you, through the chair. I agree with the previous speaker 100%. We have 9 people in this room that are elected for 4 years to represent this community and make decisions. Now, we can all, if we all choose to, we can all turn it over to staff and sit here and nod our heads, yes, 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 yes. Well, I'm sorry, that's not what I'm here for. And I hope that's not what the rest of us are here for. The rest of us are here to make decisions for the betterment of this community. And there are times, and when it doesn't suit staff, when it ends up being a great debate. And personally, I don't need staff micromanaging my motions. I will go to staff if I need help or assistance, but I won't be micromanaged, and none of us should be. That's not what we're here for. We're elected to represent the city of Cambridge, the entire city of Cambridge, not just certain sections, the entire city of Cambridge. So we all need to remember that. Thank you.
Councillor Kimpson.
Thank you very much, through the chair. Can I please get clarification on whether or not amendments will be accepted for amendment meeting number 2 if a councillor chooses to bring one forward without consulting staff?
Just for his shoulder.
Through you, Mayor. So I'm not suggesting that we are your approvers for any of these amendments. I do not want this to come across like we are micromanaging staff, because micromanaging council, because as staff, we have an obligation to make sure that you have the correct information. That is all I'm trying to explain to all members of council and the public. We are more than happy to provide you with that information. We're here to support you. If you choose not to use us and you want to bring an amendment forward, that's your prerogative. We can't hold you back from putting that amendment forward and on the floor at that point.
Councillor Kimpson.
Thank you. Just to follow up, so to clarify, the process has changed from Friday afternoon, and if someone chooses not to consult with staff, they will still be able to bring their amendment forward as long as they meet the deadline of Thursday, November the 12th at 12 noon using the prescribed form.
So I'm hearing from council at this particular time some angst or some concern around having staff involved in your amendments. So if, again, you choose not to, that's completely council's prerogative. We're not here to tell you what to do. We're here to support what you need to do for the budget process.
Councillor Kimpson.
Thank you, Mayor Jan, and I appreciate that, and it's certainly not that we don't want to. I'm just clarifying the process that we need to follow should anyone decide to bring a further amendment forward for the second amendment meeting date.
I think that's what he said. Councillor Cooper.
Sorry, but I don't think we got an answer to Councillor Kimpson's question.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, it's your prerogative if you want to bring an amendment forward without having staff involved.
And that it will still meet the criteria for an amendment. It will not be blocked.
Staff will not block. That's not our role to block. Our role is to support.
Okay, thank you. Well, I just want to make a statement. I'm very disturbed at that concept of saying that it would be blocked. ever came up at all in any discussion.
Through you, Mayor. So again, staff aren't saying blocked. Staff are saying support. We are here to support council members to make good, sound decisions. That's all we're here to do. We want to be here to support you. That's our job. That's our obligation to the city and to yourselves.
Councillor Cooper.
That is not what was said to us. It was not what was said. Am I correct here? We were told quite clearly if it...
Corrected it. So there's no sense debating this anymore. He has already stated that you will be allowed to bring those forward. So
Okay,
can we not get into this and go after a staff person who is trying to be helpful?
I'm simply acknowledging what was said to us. That should never have occurred in the first place.
He's already corrected that, Councillor Cooper. Councillor Kimpson.
Thank you, Mayor Jan. I believe that you have just clarified that if someone chooses to bring forward an amendment without consulting staff, it will still be permitted to go forward at the second meeting, provided they follow the timelines and the date and the form.
And that it is a budget item. Yes. Okay. I think this has been believe it or not, in my opinion, it's been a really, really good, healthy meeting with a lot of comments going back and forth. The debating has been healthy. We may not agree with each other, but even though I sit here, I do agree with a lot of what you've said. And some of your things that have been removed, I do agree with those removals. So I'm not sitting up here saying, I don't agree with your amendments, that I'm going to veto them. That's not true. So I just want you to take that away. I also want to let you know that the old way of doing it for many years, when we were first on council, I can remember my first budget meeting, I got in a lot of heck for asking questions of staff at the budget meeting. The meeting had to be stopped, and I was forced to ask my questions in the back room and not allowed to bring them out in public. That's how far we have progressed here. It was a very public embarrassment for me. There was also a lot of misinformation given by councillors on their amendments or proposals that they wanted. And there were some assumptions being made by other councillors when they voted that the information that was being given to them by councillors was correct information when it was not. So I think we've come really a long way in the years since we've come on council here. This is a learning experience for all of us. It's been a long learning experience for me. It's not a position I've ever had to be in before. I value when Mr. Axiak sits here and says that they're only here to give you the information, I truly believe that's all they're doing. They're not, I have not seen anybody try to bring forward something that would be a negative to anything that you're doing here. And I would hate to think that you're going away with the attitude that council's not, staff are not working on the best for the taxpayers or for you guys. I don't believe that's true. I've sat in a lot of meetings, and most of those meetings, they say they're here to serve over and over and over again. And I don't think it's healthy for the city staff and council to be at odds at these points in time. They try to serve council and serve the public in a good way. So please take it away like that. I know you're upset. I get that. I understand that. I've gone through a really horrible past 2 days myself on this, actually longer than that. And if there's things that could be changed going back, I'm sure there's everybody in this room would change that, but this is the point that we're at. So we have reached the end of this evening's agenda. As we are still in the 29-day amendment period, we will not adjourn this meeting, but will recess and reconvene on Monday, November 24th at 5:30 for the last budget amendment meeting. And I remind council that any additional amendments must be provided to the clerk by November 20th at noon for inclusion in the November 24th addendum, unless that's changed and I've missed that. No, okay. Please ensure you connect with the appropriate general manager to discuss your amendment. It's not always good just to connect with the CFO, because the CFO does not know all the ins and outs of this, and she tries desperately to be of assistance to all of you, and you put her into a position where she doesn't know where your questions are coming from, and she may not understand the nuances and the explanations. So please, if you do connect with her, please also connect with the general manager in charge of that file. As another reminder to council, please note that amendments that were debated this evening will not be debated on the 24th, but will be voted on. If your amendment was not debated this evening due to needing more information from staff, it will be debated on the 24th. So thank you to everyone for your time and contributions, and I sincerely, honestly mean that. And be safe.